Dr. Laura Kelly has worked in school, clinic, foster care, nursing home, and hospital outpatient and inpatient settings, treating children, adults, and geriatric patients. She obtained her doctorate in clinical psychology from Adelphi University in Long Island. Dr. Kelly specializes in treating children and adults in individual, family, and group therapy, and in providing multidimensional tutoring for all individuals hoping to improve their academic performance. She has also experience in assessment and psychological report writing for various purposes, including psychoeducational reports tailored to school settings in formulation of IEPs and psychological evaluations for personal use or to obtain state-assisted services. Please welcome Dr. Laura Kelly.
That's actually not me. So I am Dr. Laura Kelly, but not that kind of doctor. I am an integrative doctor, and I fix chronic disease. So hello everyone, and I'm very honored to be here to talk to you, and thank you guys for everything that you do. When Michelle asked me to speak today, I thought, well, what's the most important thing I can tell a big group of motivated women? About health, right? So we know that there's a crisis in this country. We know that there is a health crisis with healthcare and the government, but I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about the crisis with us. 50% of Americans at least have one chronic disease. Majority of those have 2 or more. So with 50% of Americans being ill, this is statistically half of my family, statistically half of everyone's family. So this is going up, not going down, and it's going up worldwide, and it's skyrocketing in Asia. But we're mostly concerned about us. What are we going to do about this problem? This isn't a cold, right? This isn't something that's going to go away in a couple of weeks. The healthcare system, the system that we are in now, tells us that this is a chronic disease, that we will probably have it for a long time, if not the rest of our lives. We will probably take some medication. Maybe that will slow the progression of the disease. Maybe it won't. And that's really it. There isn't really a cure from the present system that we have. I find this unacceptable for a myriad of reasons. I also find it sort of morally wrong that the system leaves our families suffering. I wanted to come here today and give you an answer to this problem. So I put myself in a sort of mindset, and I see myself moving forward as if I'm in a battle, and you guys are all behind me, and we're moving forward on the battlefield, sort of fighting the good fight for our families, to make everybody healthy. And I raise my head up and I'm like, okay, here's the battlefields that we're fighting on, and I'm looking around. You guys are still behind me, and there's nobody else fighting. And I'm looking around, I'm saying, where is the help here? Where are the answers? The system doesn't have them. The people in the system want to have them, but they haven't been trained to treat chronic disease. The healthcare system, we don't even know what's happening with. The government, where are the answers? Is the WHO going to drop in health ninjas to help everybody? There is no apparent answer. I realized at that moment that what I needed to do was put you all through medical school in about 15 minutes. So that's what we're going to do. And by the end of this, I think you're going to be more clearly educated in medicine than a large part of the establishment. So I say to you that there's this large crisis that we're experiencing, that our families are suffering from, and I need you to help fix it. And you say to me, well, I can't cure disease. I'm not a doctor. And I say to you, well, wait, I'm going to change your mind. 90% of the chronic disease in this country can be prevented or treated with nutrition. We hear this sometimes, but this really is the case. The American Heart Association says 90% of heart disease can be prevented or treated with nutrition. The Harvard School for Public Health says 90% of diabetes can be prevented or treated with nutrition. It's the same for all chronic issues, osteoporosis, high blood pressure, all the chronic problems that we're experiencing here, 90% can be treated with diet. What does that mean then? So if we flip that concept upside down, it means that these problems are actually dietary deficiencies. So the first lesson in your medical school that I want to give you is let's get rid of the concept of disease completely. Let's just erase it, and let's call it deficiency. Let's call it dietary deficiency. Because I think that you'll say, yes, it's hard to treat a disease, but I can treat a deficiency. So this is the first thing, and if that's the only thing you take away from my talk today, that's the mindset that I would like to really, really emphasize. So this means that you can be doctors, and the good thing about this concept and this perspective is that the right medicines for the job here don't need prescription. Okay, so we're going to move into medical school now. The first rule is that you have to treat yourself. So I want all of you to just sort of mentally step outside of yourself for a moment and turn around and look at yourself, your first patient. So if we're talking about dietary deficiency in 90% of the problems that we face here in this chronic condition, what's the first question we need to ask the patient? The first question you have to ask is, well, what are you deficient in? You can find this out through a test that you can do at home and mail into the lab. You don't even need to go to the lab. And you can get your results and you find out what you're actually deficient in. The second half of this question when you're approaching this problem is something which is relatively new in medicine and that people are just starting to explore, but is crucial to coming up with true recommendations for diet for each person. And that is, how does this particular body respond to the nutrition that we put into it? We can tell which deficiencies we have, but how are we going to respond when we treat with nutrition? Someone over here may have, we all have a lot of deficiencies such as vitamin D and magnesium. So maybe someone over here has a deficiency and I have a deficiency. All right, actually for our medical school, let's all do a vitamin D test first. So we're all going to do the vitamin D test, and a lot of us are going to come back deficient. This is another test that you can do at home and mail into the lab. So you can also do the genetics test and mail that in. So all of this information can be gathered by you for yourself about your own body at home. You don't even need to go anywhere. So we do our vitamin D test, and someone over here comes back deficient and I come back deficient. The second part of that is that this person over here will need 5 international units to get to normal. I'm going to need 10,000 international units to get to normal because of my genetics. And there's no way we would know about that difference in treatment unless we did our genetics. So once you have this foundational information, the two sides of that coin being the deficiencies and your genetic response to nutrition, this is the foundation for treating all chronic problems. In 90% of the cases, 90, it's very high. So let's go a little further when we're talking about nutrition and genetics. There's another angle to take, which is also key importance. We've all done our vitamin D test now, and 3/4 of this room come back with low vitamin D, and a little group over here comes back normal vitamin D. What we find in research is that this group over here die more. We die more from cancer, heart disease, diabetes complications, osteoporosis complications. We die more from all chronic issues. So genetically, this is another piece of the puzzle. Why does one deficiency create all these different problems? So let's use an example here. We have a lake. We've all done our vitamin D tests and run our genetics. We've all supplemented properly, and now we all have perfect vitamin D levels. And this can apply to any nutrient, but I'm going to use vitamin D. So we have perfect vitamin D levels, and our lake is full, right? It's placid and it's calm, and there are birds and fish, and everything's very happy. Underneath this lake are mountains, and these are our genetics. So our good genetics are on the bottom, and our questionable genetics are on the top. So maybe someone here has inherited some questionable genes for blood sugar regulation or diabetes, and someone over here has inherited questionable genetics for heart disease, cholesterol, and inflammation. So as long as we have enough nutrients, vitamin D, we don't really have a problem. But as soon as we start to have deficiencies, this person's questionable genetics for diabetes are going to be revealed. This person's questionable genetics for heart disease are going to be revealed. So all of a sudden, you can see how a deficiency of one thing can cause all sorts of different problems based on your personal genetics. So I'm going to go even a little deeper, and really that will be all you need to know. Heart disease and osteoporosis are two diseases affecting women more than any other. Heart disease is the #1 killer of women in America. It's the #1 killer in America, period, and the #1 killer of women. And osteoporosis is also a really big problem for women mostly. Men do get it too, but mostly women. So from the disease perspective, right? From the disease perspective, heart disease, cardiovascular system, inflammation, cholesterol, osteoporosis, bones, calcium, minerals, right? They look really, really different from a disease perspective. But we did away with that. And we're going to look at it from the deficiency perspective. And it looks really different. So if you're over 40, your doctor will tell you to take a calcium pill. So we're all going to take our calcium pills. We've done our vitamin D, so we have enough vitamin D to absorb that calcium, because if we don't, it's hard to absorb. So now the calcium is inside the body, and the body is like, oh, this is fantastic. Well, there's tons of calcium here now. I want to put some of it into the bone, because the bone is not only to help us walk, it's not only for skeletons, it's also a storage device. So the body says, well, let's put this extra calcium into the bone. And he goes and he knocks on the door of the guy that's supposed to do that, and the guy is sleeping. He's sleeping because he doesn't have his magnesium, and he doesn't have his vitamin K2. These two pieces, plus the vitamin D, are essential to turn on the switch which tells the calcium to go into the bone. Without these two vitamins present, the body doesn't know what to do with the calcium. So the body says, well, I don't know what to do with the calcium. I can't get into the bone. I have a lot of other problems to solve. I'm going to go do them. The calcium is still there. It's in the bloodstream. We excrete some of it. It circulates a little bit. And if you have, perhaps you have a little bit of high blood pressure and you have some damage in your arteries or some inflammation, suddenly the calcium now is going to make calcified plaque. So now you have a heart disease problem. So you can see from the deficiency, they aren't separate diseases at all. They're separate responses to fundamental nutritional deficiencies. So that's pretty much what you need to understand, is that there are tools available to you that you can do at home and take care of all of your deficiencies as your first patient. And then, once you've understood that process, you can take your families through this process. Anyone in your family who is suffering from these chronic problems can be fixed in 90% of the cases. So now that you guys are graduating, doctors need tools. I've written a book to help you understand these things. A lot of doctors, like me, write books for you, because we know that the answers don't lie elsewhere. They lie with us, and with us guiding you. So there are a lot of books around to help you do this. I'm also creating an online platform that's going to sort of encapsulate all of these ideas that you all can use as a tool to help you through this process. If anybody wants to talk to me about that, I'd love to talk to people about it. So we've moved this story, right? We've changed the story, I hope, in your mind from a story of disease to a story of deficiency, which is a lot easier to deal with. I'd like to change one other story with you before I go. I had a cookbook, and it said in it, basically, this book is for you if you aren't smart enough to go to college or get a job. And this was a cookbook from the 50s. And I think that women know this concept. I think we sort of innately have, it's in our culture. We know that this is a put down to be barefoot and pregnant in the kitchen. And I looked at that story from the perspective of what I'm speaking about now, in the power of treating people with food, the power of this real, true, fundamental medicine. And I thought, wow, that story is backwards. Because if you are keeping the hearth and keeping the flame of the cooking in the kitchen, you are providing nutrition to your family. If you're providing nutrition to your family, you are providing health. I don't see a more powerful position, frankly. And I feel like it's even greater than that. There's sort of the goddess perspective on this, which is that we are actually divine translators, because we take all of this, the gifts of the earth, the nutrition from the earth, we transform that and create life. This is phenomenal power. And in the same way, we divinely transform this nutrition and feed it to our families and give them the gift of health. So I'm stepping up into this concept of us with this great power in the kitchen, and I would like to ask you guys to consider that perspective and come with me for that, because I don't really see any other answers. And that's it. So, thank you.